Good evening. Tonight we enter a world where your hands belong to another, where stone walls hold no warmth, where your name matters less than the tasks you complete. You are not a knight, not a noble, just one more body among dozens, dressed in livery that fits but isn't yours, sleeping in a bed that never quite warms. Close your eyes if you wish. Breathe in the damp air thick with hearth smoke and tallow. Feel the coarse wool of your assigned uniform, the metallic taste of hunger when better food sits just beyond reach. The castle owns your mornings, your blisters, your silence. The 2 sets of clothing for your scant-free days are your only true possessions. The serving bell's chime pulls you forward. The butler's ledger lies open. Another identical day begins. You continue. The darkness moves before you do. Someone else's elbow digs into your ribs as they roll over in the shared bunk. 3 pallets to a frame, straw stuffing pressed flat from months of use. Your bones know the pattern of wooden slats beneath, the dips where the rope webbing has stretched. The air smells of tallow fat and unwashed wool, of the chamber pot that needs emptying again. You hear someone murmuring prayers, words in Latin, spoken softly into folded hands. Maybe to God, maybe to no one, maybe just to practice the sound of speaking, to remember your voice exists beyond yes and at once. A cockerel crows beyond the walls. The narrow window shows only grey. You find your shoes by touch, leather worn soft from years of wear, stitching loose at the heel where you've adjusted your gait to avoid the blister that never quite heals. The serving bell cuts through morning quiet, 3 sharp clangs. Your stomach clenches, not with hunger yet, that comes later, but with the knowledge of what follows. Around you, bodies begin their practiced dance of dressing in cramped space. You reach for the livery hanging from its wooden peg. The rough wool bears another servant's shape in the shoulders, stretched in places that don't match your frame. The hose sag and require constant adjustment. You dress quickly, muscles moving through routine while your mind stays elsewhere. A beetle crosses the floorboards near your foot. You let it continue its journey. The castle houses many residents who never appear in anyone's ledger. You continue. The upper corridor brazier has gone cold. Your task to relight it before the master of horse makes his rounds. You strike flint 3 times before catching spark. The charcoal bucket feels heavier today, or perhaps you feel weaker. The smoke rises wrong, curling back against the ceiling instead of flowing out the window. You wave your hands, trying to direct it away. That's the 2nd time this week. The butler's voice comes from shadows. You didn't hear him approach in his soft shoes, his ledger already open, quill poised. The master of horse mentioned the corridor was cold yesterday evening. You nod, adding more charcoal, adjusting the pieces. The fire builds reluctantly. Behind you, the scratch of quill on parchment records this small failure. After you finish here, Lady Margaret requires her embroidery hoop retrieved from the solar. It was left on the window seat. The solar, 3 flights up, through corridors where you're not supposed to walk during daylight hours when family might see you. You calculate the route, servant stairs, side passages, timing to avoid the children's morning lessons. Movement at the end of the corridor catches your eye. The Lord himself, walking with his steward. They pause by a tapestry, discussing something, hunting perhaps, or estate business. The Lord's hunting dog trots beside them, well-fed and wearing a jewelled collar. For a moment, the Lord's gaze sweep toward you. Your eyes drop immediately to the brazier. When you look up again, they've moved on. You might have been a shadow, a piece of furniture temporarily blocking their view. The brazier finally draws properly. You gather the empty coal bucket, heavy leather gloves blackened from years of this task. The butler makes another note, then gestures toward the stairs. Time to begin the climb to the solar, careful to use corridors where servants belong. In the stairwell, you pass the chaplain descending from morning mass. He nods slightly, unusual acknowledgement. Perhaps the saints encourage kindness to the lowest. Or perhaps he's still thinking of his prayers and hasn't properly seen you at all. You continue climbing. Each step upward takes you deeper into the castle's hierarchy, closer to rooms where mistakes cost more than time. You continue. The kitchens roar with morning industry, 3 ovens blazing, 2 hearths smoking, water boiling in iron cauldrons. The master cook shouts orders without looking at faces, pointing with a wooden spoon black from years of use. Scullions scurry between stations, arms loaded with pots and baskets. Your place is at the far end, where wooden bowls wait in uneven stacks. The morning ale comes from a barrel near the door, weak brew, watered down from yesterday's batch. It tastes of barley and nothing else but warms your empty stomach. Oatmeal today. The pot bubbles with thick grey paste, stirred by the youngest kitchen maid. Her arms have grown strong from this daily task. She serves without looking up, each portion measured by habit rather than generosity. You find space at the long table where others already eat. Beside you, an older servant adds salt from a small pouch kept in his sleeve. 10 years of service earns such privileges. You eat plain oats, watching steam rise from your bowl, wondering if your tongue will ever know salt beyond kitchen accidents and feast day scraps. A cat winds between legs under the table, searching for fallen crumbs. Someone kicks at it absently. The animal dodges, continues hunting. Its ribs show through matted fur, but it moves with dignity. Like you, it has learned to survive on margins. The smell drifts from the upper dining chamber. Fresh bread, fried meat, something sweet with cinnamon that makes your mouth water involuntarily. Through the kitchen arch, you watch white linen unfold across the high table. Silver plates appear, handled with cloth to avoid fingerprints. Your wooden spoon scrapes the last oats from your bowl. Still hungry, always hungry at this hour. But the master cook calls for empty bowls, her voice cutting through kitchen noise. Time measured not by satisfaction, but by schedule. You pour the bowl's remaining warmth over your chilled hands, before adding it to the growing stack. Small comfort stolen before the next task begins. You continue. Lady Margaret's embroidery hoop sits on the solar window seat exactly where you expected. You approach carefully. Everything here costs more than years of your wages. The frame holds half-finished roses, silk threads catching morning light like spider webs sewn with colour. As you lift the hoop, something falls, a small gold ring, bouncing once on the stone floor. You freeze, watching it roll beneath a carved chest. For 3 heartbeats you consider leaving it, pretending you never saw, but someone will notice its absence. They always do. You kneel, reaching into shadow. Your fingers find the ring, closing around it. The metal feels warm, substantial, as if it holds heat from her skin. For a moment, less than a moment, you slide it onto your own finger. It fits perfectly. Gold reflects in the window, catching sunlight like captured fire. You remove it quickly, placing it on the embroidery hoop where she'll find it. Your hand feels lighter, as if the ring took something with it when you released it. In this room, even touching feels like theft. The solar window overlooks the bailey. Below, merchants arrive with cartloads of goods. You recognize some by their colours and wagons. The wool trader in blue, the wine merchant with his sealed barrels. They bring the outside world to castle gates, but never beyond them. Like the ring, these things pass through your days without changing them. You lift the embroidery hoop carefully, checking that the ring sits stable. The roses stare up at you, half-formed flowers that will bloom under Lady Margaret's skilled hands while you scrub floors and carry burdens. Beautiful things created in rooms you'll only enter to clean. On the window seat, an open book lies forgotten. Prayer text in Latin, words you can sound out but not understand. The pages smell of parchment and something else, the faint scent of lavender from her hands. You don't touch it. Books are mysteries meant for others. You turn toward the door, embroidery hoop held steady. In the corner, a full-length looking glass reflects your departure. For one moment, you see yourself in this room, livery faded from washings, face marked by service, hands permanently darkened from work. Then you step past, and the reflection belongs only to empty luxury again. The ring catches light one final time as you carry the hoop away. You held gold in your hand, wore it on your finger. It changed nothing except the shape of longing it left behind. You continue. The laundry trough steams in the cold wash-house. Yesterday's linens need boiling, scrubbing, wringing until your arms shake. You feed wood to the fire beneath the copper tub, watching water begin to bubble. The first touch of lye soap makes your already cracked hands burn like flame. Each sheet requires individual attention. You submerge them one by one, using the wooden paddle to push fabric down into scalding water. Steam rises, carrying scents of soap and old sweat, and something faintly sweet from the Lord's chamber, perhaps perfume spilled on cloth during dressing. The boiling water turns grey, then brown. You drain it carefully, watching precious soap slip away. Fresh water needs hauling from the well. 3 buckets, each requiring the strength in your shoulders and back. The rope handle of the bucket cuts across your palm where calluses have formed, then worn smooth, then cracked open again. You lift each heavy sheet to the ringing frame. The motion pulls against every muscle in your core. Water pours down in steady streams as you twist, forcing out moisture that soaks through your shoes and makes walking treacherous. Your hands slip on wet fabric. You adjust your grip, continue wringing. By the 4th sheet, your forearms tremble. A horn sounds from the bailey, riders approaching. Through the wash-house window, you glimpse horses entering the gates. Guests arriving, which means more linens tomorrow, more food preparation tonight. The cycle expands but never breaks. You hang the wrung sheets on the drying lines outside. The winter wind immediately steals warmth from the wet fabric, sending it back toward you in icy drafts. Your hands numb as you pin each corner, dropping more wooden pegs than you secure. At this rate, your fingers won't straighten properly until summer. The last sheet snaps like a sail as wind catches it. You step back, watching the line of white fabric dance against grey sky. Clean linens that will dirt again in days, requiring this same process, these same aches, this same expenditure of failing strength. Your back protests as you bend to collect fallen pegs. The ground feels unsteady beneath you, not dizzy exactly, but as if the earth itself has grown tired of supporting your weight. You straighten slowly, joints creaking like old hinges. Inside, the wash-house now holds tomorrow's work. The Lord's riding clothes, muddied from today's hunt. The fabric smells of horse and leather and something you can't identify. Wealth has its own scent, different from the honest stink of service. One more task remains, emptying the wash water into the drainage trench. You tip the copper carefully, watching dirty water swirl down carved channels toward the castle's waste system. Everything flows away eventually. Water, strength, years. Only the work remains constant. You continue. The chapel silver needs polishing for evening prayer. You arrange each piece on clean cloth, chalice, pattern, candlesticks that stood witness to countless services. In this room, tarnish forms like condensed belief, dulling metal that once blazed with reflected flame. Your cloth moves in practiced patterns, applying just enough pressure. Too little, and marks remain. Too much, and you risk scratching surfaces that reflect the faces of saints painted on nearby walls. The work demands precision your tired hands struggle to maintain. A shadow falls across your cloth. The chaplain enters for private prayer, kneeling at the altar rail without acknowledging your presence. You continue polishing, shrinking your movements to avoid disrupting his meditation. In this space, your labour must exist without existing, like breath held underwater. The chalice emerges bright, catching afternoon light through coloured windows. Red and blue patterns dance across the polished surface, saints' halos, fragments of ascending souls, all reduced to abstract colour in reflective curves. You set it aside carefully, beginning work on the candlesticks. While polishing, you discover something lodged behind the chapel's offering box. A child's wooden horse, painted in fading blue and red, lost during some holy day celebration, now gathering dust in shadow. You retrieve it, examining the carved details. A tiny saddle, a mane suggested by careful chisel marks. The toy feels warm in your palm, perhaps from lying near a heating pipe. You turn it over, finding initials scratched crudely on the base. T.L., the Lord's youngest son, probably. You've seen him playing elaborate games in the Bailey, commanding armies of wooden figures while nurses watch from benches. You place the toy where it might be noticed, on a ledge near the chapel door where the family exits after services. A small kindness that costs nothing, requires no recognition. Tomorrow the toy will disappear into another child's game, your brief stewardship forgotten completely. The chaplain finishes his prayers, rising with joints that crack like yours. He pauses at the door, surveying the polished silver. A slight nod, whether acknowledging the work or merely noting its completion, you'll never know. The door closes behind him with a soft thud. Alone again, you finish polishing in deepening shadows. Outside, bells ring for none. Mid-afternoon prayers for those who can spare time for devotion. Your prayer happens here, in careful attention to sacred objects, in small acts that leave no trace except clean metal ready for evening service. You arrange the completed pieces precisely, each positioned for easy access during Mass. The silver catches your reflection one final time, face partially hidden by shadow, hands marked by service, presence notable only in its effect on surrounding objects. Tomorrow requires the same careful tending, the same invisible maintenance. In this cycle of polish and tarnish, you exist as a necessary mechanism, noticed only in absence or failure. You continue. Time moves like water through castle stones, constant, erosive, reshaping everything it touches. The sundial in the courtyard marks hours, but servants measure days in tasks completed, meals skipped, stairs climbed. You pass the dial, carrying armloads of fresh rushes, watching shadow crawl across marked numerals. Your destination, the upper hall where yesterday's floor covering has grown fetid from tracked mud and spilled wine. The rushes smell sweet when new. Herbs scattered between them, releasing fragrance underfoot. But after days of traffic, they become repositories of castle life. Dropped food, dog waste, small objects lost and ground into the mix. You begin at the far end, gathering old rushes with a wooden rake. Dust rises in clouds that make you cough, releasing sense of decay and dampness. Somewhere beneath layers of organic debris, the stone floor exists. You know this intellectually, though you haven't seen it bare in months. Time steals your vision incrementally. Each day you strain to see detail in dimming light, distinguishing between different shades of dirt, separating valuable debris from worthless. Your eyes water constantly now from smoke and dust. By next winter, you might need stronger candles just to complete evening tasks. A memory surfaces unbidden. 3 summers ago, a troupe of performers visited the castle. Musicians, acrobats, a storyteller who painted pictures with words. You watched from the kitchens as they set up in the Bailey, their colourful clothes like flags against grey stone. That afternoon, the lady of the castle laughed at a juggler's mistake, the sound carrying even to the wash-house. But such disruptions pass quickly. Within a day, the performers departed, leaving only muddy ground and scraps of bright fabric caught in bushes. The castle returned to its rhythms, and time resumed its patient work of erasure. You spread fresh rushes methodically, estimating coverage to avoid waste. The castle's annual consumption of rushes could feed a village family for months, but comfort comes in small increments for those who can afford it, while those who provide it measure progress in inches covered and hours remaining until rest. A bell signals afternoon's progression, not the chapel bell or the guard's warning, something from the Lord's private chambers, perhaps calling for wine, perhaps announcing a bath, perhaps marking time according to pleasures you'll never experience. You've learned to identify each bell's purpose without understanding its urgency. Memory betrays you again. Your mother once explained saints' days, identifying which bells called faithful to specific devotions. But faces fade faster than skills in this life. You remember the sound of her voice better than its words, the warmth of shared bread better than her features. The Lord passes through the hall, attended by his personal servant. They step over the fresh rushes without acknowledgement, discussing tomorrow's hunt. Their conversation fragments reach you, the heart near Hazel Grove. Lord Hugh promised fresh horses. The servant takes notes on a small tablet, expensive ink catching afternoon light. Hours dissolve into repeated motions. Rake, gather, replace, sweep. Time consumes more than daylight. It devours memory, strength, the ability to imagine anything beyond current tasks. Evening approaches like slow tide, bringing different duties but identical exhaustion, yet time also preserves. These stones will outlast you, holding impressions of countless servants who performed these same motions. The castle remembers in its foundations what individual lives forget. Perhaps that's comfort, knowing your labour joins an unbroken chain stretching back generations. Or perhaps it's tragedy, realising you'll leave no mark beyond maintained standards, clean floors, properly mixed rushes scattered according to centuries-old patterns. Tomorrow begins before this day truly ends. You continue. Evening duties commence as daylight fails. You move through darkening corridors, lighting wall sconces that will burn until dawn. Each flame requires careful tending, trimmed wicks, positioned candles, cleared wax from previous nights. The castle consumes as much light as food, though servants rarely benefit from either abundance. The Lord's chamber fire needs banking for overnight warmth. Oak logs arranged in careful patterns, damped but not extinguished, providing steady heat through darkness. You know the science of fire maintenance better than reading or numbers, which woods burn longest, how to build coals that release warmth gradually. Through narrow windows, stars begin appearing. On clear nights like this, you sometimes pause to identify patterns. Not proper knowledge, no one taught you constellation names, but practical recognition. That cluster rises before dawn, duties begin. Those 3 bright stars mark midnight's guard change. Lower levels grow cold first. The castle's warmth rises naturally, leaving kitchens and storage areas chilled by nightfall. You wear extra layers now, a privilege earned through years of service, an old cloak passed down from a servant who died last winter. In the chapel, you prepare for compline. Fresh candles placed precisely, prayer books open to correct pages for those who read Latin. The chaplain will arrive shortly, possibly followed by devout family members. Your task: ensure sacred space appears maintained by invisible hands. The ancient stones seem to contract as temperature drops, settling with tiny groans only noticed in quiet moments. How many servants have heard these sounds? How many winters have passed with identical preparation, identical surrender to approaching night? A peculiar incident during chapel preparation. While adjusting an altar cloth, you find a note tucked beneath the missal, written in common tongue, not Latin. The handwriting appears hurried, nervous. Meet me tomorrow at dawn near the postern gate. Bring your personal effects. We leave before the guard changes. Your hands shake slightly as you read again. Someone planning escape. Someone who assumes the reader shares their desperation. You study the handwriting, trying to identify its author. Too neat for a fellow servant, too uncertain for family. Perhaps one of the minor knights, planning departure before debts arrive. You fold the note exactly as found, replacing it beneath the missal. Not your secret to keep or reveal. In the morning, someone will find their message undiscovered. You'll be scrubbing floors when they wait at the postern gate, wondering if escape ever truly exists beyond castle walls. The chapel bells ring, calling faithful to evening prayer. You retreat to shadows, watching the chaplain enter, followed by several household members. Their voices rise in practiced Latin, words worn smooth by repetition like stone steps under countless feet. Through the chapel window, more stars emerge. City lights can't reach this far into countryside. The darkness here is complete, broken only by fire and careful rationing of precious candles. You'll sleep soon. Another identical day concluded. Another beginning only hours away. Before returning to the servants' quarters, you complete final checks. Kitchens cleaned for tomorrow's baking, necessary fires banked properly, morning supplies prepared and positioned. Each task performed automatically now, muscle memory replacing conscious thought. The bunk room door opens to familiar sounds, snoring, coughing, someone's whispered prayers. You undress in darkness, finding your palate by touch. The straw has compressed during the day, requiring adjustment before providing minimal comfort. Your two good outfits remain folded in their chest, saved for days that never seem to arrive. Sleep comes despite discomfort. Outside, guards call the watch. Somewhere, someone meets their planned rendezvous or waits alone in frozen darkness. The castle breathes around you, patient and endless, already preparing tomorrow's demands. Tomorrow will find that note moved or missing. Tomorrow holds identical tasks performed with failing strength. Tomorrow begins the moment sleep releases you to dawn bells and another serving of thin porridge. You continue. The castle's mechanisms function through accumulated service, meals prepared, floors cleaned, fires maintained, secrets kept. Your labour disappears into daily operations while the structure persists, demanding identical maintenance from whoever follows. Time measures itself in replaced servants rather than improved conditions. The butler's ledger records names, wages, infractions with bureaucratic precision. Some entries end abruptly, illness, injury, age catching up with depleted bodies. Others simply change hands when new servants inherit abandoned duties. You recognize your future in older servants' trembling hands, their careful movements compensating for accumulated damage. The castle offers no retirement, only increasing frailty until replacement becomes necessary. Whether you serve 5 years or 50, departure looks the same. The stones remember everyone and no one. Each generation leaves invisible marks, worn doorways, polished surfaces, paths created by millions of repeated footsteps. The castle archives exhaustion in its very foundations, yet remains perpetually hungry for fresh service. Outside these walls, the world changes. Cities grow, harvests vary, kings rise and fall. Inside, cycles repeat with mechanical precision. The serving bell rings, the butler notes attendance, tasks wait in endless succession. Your name appears in ledgers as a line item between other forgotten servants. When you're gone, someone else will sleep in your spot, wear the same livery, polish the same silver. The castle's true immortality lies not in stone, but in this unbreaking chain of labour. Tomorrow promises nothing except continuation. The bell will ring again, the stairs need climbing again, the floors require scrubbing again. You continue.